You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. I'm Frank because I have to be. On today's show, we are talking with a man who has been a major figure in Montreal media for decades. He currently runs the Montreal Radio and Television School. His name is Robert Vairo, and he is going to tell us what life is like in the broadcast industry. Welcome to Frank Talks, Robert Vairo.
Frank, I'm so pleased that you asked me to do this. The broadcast industry is phenomenal. It's exciting, it's vibrant, it's speaking directly to a community, to members of a community, speaking to you, and you. It's a medium that is hard to kill. Television couldn't do it, video couldn't do it. Internet is actually enhancing it because you can surf any radio station and listen to any radio station while you surf. I actually got into broadcasting because I was very bad in sports. I got crunched in football, and I was towered over in basketball, and I tried my hand at goalie, and I was really a human sieve. But I love the games so much, and jogging as well, marathon running, that one of my instructors in high school said, well, you've got a pretty decent voice, Vairo, why don't you get into radio? So it never dawned on me until we won the Intercollegiate Basketball Championship in a little town in northern Ontario where I was born. I was so excited because we had won the championship. We had defeated 4 other high schools in our town, and this was big news. So I called the radio station, and I said, hey, we just won the Intercollegiate Championship. He says, oh, what was the score? I said, score? Roll the tape. I've got a report. He said, what do you mean? I said, roll the tape. I've got it. How long do you want? He says, oh, as long as you want. I said, okay, thank you. So I went on and I gave them a report, signing off Robert Vairo, CKSO News. Those are the callers of the station. And that was the beginning. The guy came back on the line and said, where are you working? I said, I'm only in grade 10 in Ontario. He says, why don't you come over here and see so-and-so tomorrow morning? They may have a job for you. And that's how it started. And it's been a wonderful ride ever since. I went to Concordia, got my communications degree at radio and television, paid my tuition, and with the help of my parents. And I love Montreal so much, I stayed here.
So let me ask you this. Other than your teacher or your coach encouraging you to go ahead and do a report, use your voice, was your goal at the time to become an athlete and then you got sidetracked?
Don't know. That's an interesting question. You know, in life, I just find it, follow your gut. You know, if you make plans and they sour, you get very disappointed. So I really didn't have an objective other than to do what I really like doing. And then when you do what you like doing, it doesn't get better. And you seek happiness and money will find you. Not that you get into radio for big sums of money. You become a vet or a dentist if you want that. But it gives you a comfortable living, and that's the key, I think, you know, to set your goal. Perhaps there's got to be some influences. My grandmother loved radio, was an avid radio listener, and so she was paralyzed and had to be wheeled around in a wheelchair from room to room. So my grandfather, he had a radio for her in every room. And, of course, I was hanging around my grandmother quite a bit. I was exposed to radio wherever we went in the house. And I still have the old floor grandfather radio, which I got refurbished from, I think it was a Mr. Turner at John Abbott College. He did a fine job in refurbishing the guts of the old radio, which I have at the school as a reminder of that's where it all began. So I guess there are some external influences, Frank, but then, you know, in life, you plan and you get disillusioned because it doesn't turn out the way you want it or the way you expected it or the way you anticipated it. And so I guess if you follow your gut or if you set some kind of an objective in the distance, and how you get there, you don't know. But just keep your eyes set on that objective and you'll get there.
How do you stay motivated?
Radio is pretty easy. Radio is a drug. Radio is more than a job. It's more than a career. It's a lifestyle. It's almost a culture. There's an instant bonding of people who do radio. If you do radio, you can walk into just about any station in the country and say, hi, I'm so-and-so. I work at such and such a station. Oh, come on in. I've done that so often, going through the back door on a Saturday or a Sunday where a radio station was closed and knocked on the back door, and some guy comes out in some town in Saskatchewan or Ontario or or BC or just next door at Ontario and says hi, and I tell them who I am and what I do. Come on in. So there's an instant fraternity, sorority, call it what you want, but there's an instant bond with people in radio. But radio is exciting because you get to speak with people directly, especially talk radio today. Music radio may be dying. I mean, why would you want to listen to music on the radio? Unless you've got a really interesting announcer who's got something to tell you that you don't know and gives you reason to listen. Otherwise, I mean, just load up your iPod, or your MP3, or load up whatever you want and listen to whatever music, whatever variety you want to select. But talk radio is vital, and it's a way of communicating things. It's the fifth column. It really is. It can really be the fifth column, as well as social media on the Internet. Radio can cause a lot of damage, can make a lot of people happy, and can get a lot of justice achieved. Because, your public voice and there's interaction and the community can speak out. It's an opportunity for everybody in the community to have a voice, provided it's done right. That's why I'm really disappointed that the CRTC allowed 940 and the CKGM, the all-news station, to close. I mean, that's disgusting. It's a sham. I mean, here's Montreal, a major city, with only one news talk station in the city, CJAD. And the French have only one talk station in the city, 98.5. And not only that, but after 11 o'clock at night, that French station, owned by Chorus, goes music, and all of its Chorus stations across Quebec play music. How insulting is that to a community? A major market with only one, actually, 3/4 of a French talk station and one full. At least CJD stays on 24 hours with talk. But pardon me for sidetracking there. It's just I'm surprised there's not more people who are writing the CRTC and saying, hey, why did you allow these stations to close? They need a license to open, and you need a hearing to get a license. Why don't you hold hearings if they want to close? They belong to the community. It's a community service, after all. That's what radio stations are supposed to be. So there's a lot to motivate you in radio, as you can see. So that's what keeps me going. When people usually end their careers, I started a radio and TV school because I was teaching at Concordia, and so many students were coming up to me and saying, how do I get into radio? I said, well, Ryerson in Toronto, I suppose Journalism Carleton in Ottawa, Dalhousie, Halifax. We didn't have anything. That's Luciano, my dog.
Hi, Luciano.
Yeah. The digital world had begun, and suddenly you were able to put 5 radio studios where there was only one. The analog studio required huge tape machines, as you know, cartridge machines. Everything was huge. Everything was built like a fridge, and all of a sudden the digital world comes out, and a studio is like a phone booth, as long as there's a big server someplace. So I was convinced by someone actually I was going out with at the time, why don't you start a radio station, right, radio school of some kind, because so many students wanted to get into it with no outlet. So I looked around for a place and found some place on St. Catherine Street between Bishop and Crescent at a time when Alloué was, everybody knew how to spell Alloué. This is about 12 years ago. Remember, they are all Alloué, all along St. Catherine Street. Everything was for rent. So we got in on the 3rd floor facing St. Catherine on between Bishop and Crescent and started the Montreal Radio and TV School and had 5-6 radio studios built by Denis Dion, actually. He was the chief engineer at Chaume at the time. Now he's in Calgary, making much more money, I suppose. So that's the way it started. And the school has been going on we're going into our 13th year now. So I'm kind of proud of that. And what keeps me motivated is students coming back to the school or emailing me and saying, hey, one of our students just graduated and they like him so much at the Team 990, that they put a Team 990 jersey on him, and he's getting sound bites for Tony Marinaro, and then he sent them on the road and did street interviews, and he couldn't be happier, and he just writes back, says, thanks so much for everything. Thank you. So, things like that make you, anybody who, to me, if we can help anybody get into radio, an industry that is so exciting and that I love so much, why not? That's what keeps me motivated. All these things. I tell you, Frank, when I die, if they let me come back, I want to do some more radio.
Well, then I hope they let you.
I hope they do, because I don't know what form radio's going to have then. Everything's possible in radio, you know. You can do any topic. You can do fetish, you can do straight politics, you can do sports. Whatever we're talking about, whatever's happening in your community, that's what a good medium should do. Mirror the community it represents. Different cultures, you know, if it were possible, different languages too. It'd be great to have a one French and English station that's both French and English. Mr. Titleman started that with CKGM decades and decades ago, and you know, politics gets in the way of everything and messed it up, and now there's strictly English, strictly French, and we've got boxed-in formats of either top 40 or the classic rock. There's no variety anymore in radio, in terms of music anyway. So, you know, if you look at what people put on their iPods, what do they put on their MP3s? I have students at our school, early 20s, late teens, early 30s, some of them. They've got U2 on there, but they also have Frank Sinatra. They have the Crooners, Dean Martin. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
And they also have Black Sabbath. I mean, and Hendrix. So, and Lady Gaga. It's a total variety. So there's no such thing as this group is going to like this kind of music, this group is going to like hip-hop, this group is going to like... No, everybody likes a variety. So anyway, a lot to talk about and a lot to be motivated in radio. It's a great industry. Thank you, Marconi.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. We'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Your inner game is as unique and personal as your signature or your fingerprints. This book provides you with the means to create your own seduction persona. By this, learn what it means to be a man and attract the women you want. Learn about how men and women think differently and how to take the lead in a relationship. This book is for you at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, does your man squash your inner vixen? When you ask him to repeat what you have just said to him, does he look at you like a deer caught in the headlights? Does he think that leaving the game on while you talk to him is a good idea? Is his favorite phrase, "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right"? Does wife or girlfriend mean boring and dull to him? Ladies, don't you wish that he knows what you mean when you ask him if you look fat? Then you need to buy him the book, Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. On sale now at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. I'm Frank because I have to be. We have been talking with Robert Vairo, who runs the Montreal Radio and Television School. He was good enough to give us time. Very busy man, very busy schedule. Lots of students are working and learning at his school. He has an excellent track record helping people find work in the broadcast industry, one of the most difficult industries to break into, and Robert Vairo is a man who can help you break into it. Welcome back, Robert Vairo.
Thanks very much. I think you're overdoing it. I help, but it's up to the student. It depends on how much passion you've got for this. If you really want to get into it, and there's a lot of ways of getting into radio. It's not just conventional radio and a studio and a microphone as part of a radio station. Internet radio is coming on big, something that we teach at the school as well. So you could run your own radio station, as you almost do, from your laptop. So radio is taking on different forms, and it's adapting very nicely to the digital world.
Robert Vairo, if someone wanted to contact you, join up with your school, find out more information, where could they go?
RadioTV.ca is probably the easiest way. RadioTV.ca. It's as simple as that. That's our website. You can log on there and get a hold of us. There's lots of contact information. We've got a little scoop here. We've got a new web page coming out. Actually, it could even be out as early as this weekend with a lot of blogs and newsletters. So, you know, even if you're not interested in radio but have something to say about radio or TV or social media on the internet, I'd be interested in hearing from you and putting your little piece as a blog on our website. As long as it has to do with radio or television or media of any kind, you're more than welcome. So RadioTV.ca is how you can get a hold of us. We like to interview everybody who registers at the school. You just don't walk in and say, oh, I'm taking a radio course. We like to chat it up with you and find out if this is really what you want and make sure you're in the right place and you're prepared to get involved. A full-time 3-month course or a part-time 6-month radio course, and something similar for television as well. So we ask you to come down to the studio and visit it. Just feel comfortable and know the school and get a good feel for the environment and say, hey, you know what, I could do this. I feel good here. Or, you know what, this doesn't work for me, so you leave. We're getting so diversified now. As I mentioned, we're getting into internet radio. We're starting a media summer workshop for teenagers this summer, obviously. People who are holding summer camps or young people who want to get into introduction to radio, to internet radio, to announcing of any kind. We're doing that as well. And, of course, in addition to our radio and TV training and media training as well for administrators, we're right downtown on St. Catherine Street between Bishop and Crescent. Actually, you'll see the on-air sign in the window when you go by on the south side of St. Catherine. So that's how to do it, Frank. And again, I appreciate very much you giving us this opportunity at the Montreal Radio and TV School.
We're talking with Robert Vairo from the Montreal Radio and TV School. One last question, Robert, before you got to go.
Sure.
Who are some of the instructors that we would learn from?
Well, in television, there's Jed Kahane, who's the news director at CTV. There's Natasha Gargiulo, who is Global's Entertainment Canada producer and reporter, ET Canada. Frank Cavallero from the CBC teaches weather. Laurie Graham of CTV. And I'm involved as well. I do a lot of the teaching in radio. Plus, we have a lot of guests who come in. Pete Marier from Shome comes in. Sharon Hyland has been in. Kat Spencer has been in. Rick Peterson has been in. Andrew Carter from CJAD has been in. So what they do is they come in and they talk to the students, but they also give direct feedback to a student. We get the students to prepare a little demo, a little bit of work of what they've done, a little audio portfolio of what they've done, and Andrew, for example, will come in and give him his evaluation to each student individually in their own studio. So that's a big help as well. So, anybody in the broadcast industry in this city has come or can come to work a little stint at the school.
We're talking with Robert Vairo, who runs the Montreal Radio and Television School. Robert, it's been absolutely great having you on the show. I've really enjoyed our talk. Fortunately, we don't have too much time to continue. One last thing before we go. If you could go back in time and give yourself, your younger self, some advice, what would it be?
Good question. Follow your gut. Follow your intuition. Just don't plan. Just set an objective. That's Luciano, my dog, as the mailman drops his morning drop-off. Okay, Lou, hang on a second. Hang on, we're on the radio. Hang on. So that would be it. Don't plan. Planning can be very discouraging and disillusioning because it doesn't turn out many times. Set the objective, know where you want to be, know where you want to go, and on the way you may find that's not the place. And don't think of it as wasted and get dejected. Everything you've done is not wasted. It's part of building your equity. And just keep moving. Keep moving in some direction. Keep moving in some direction, and if you're not motivated, find out why. Because there's something out there in this world that's going to motivate you to achieve great heights if you want.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles. Good night, everybody.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Your inner game is as unique and personal as your signature or your fingerprints. This book provides you with the means to create your own seduction persona. By this, learn what it means to be a man and attract the women you want. Learn about how men and women think differently and how to take the lead in a relationship. This book is for you at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, does your man squash your inner vixen? When you ask him to repeat what you have just said to him, does he look at you like a deer caught in the headlights? Does he think that leaving the game on while you talk to him is a good idea? Is his favorite phrase, "Yes, dear, you are absolutely right"? Does wife or girlfriend mean boring and dull to him? Ladies, don't you wish that he knows what you mean when you ask him if you look fat? Then you need to buy him the book, Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. On sale now at franktalks.com.